What if Germany's downfall wasn't inevitable? One leader's decisions cost millions of lives and changed history forever. A mysterious halt at Dunkirk, a declaration that awakened a sleeping giant. Resources diverted to a secret, horrific project. Each choice sealed Germany's fate. But which one doomed them first? The mysterious halt at Dunkirk. May 1940. Thousands of British and French soldiers were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk. Their backs against the sea. German tanks were closing in. Victory seemed certain. The enemy had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. But then something strange happened. An order came down from the top. Stop the advance. Wait, don't attack. For 3 critical days, German forces held back while the trapped soldiers organized a desperate escape. Fishing boats, civilian ships, and naval vessels crossed the English Channel again and again. Over 300,000 Allied troops made it safely to Britain. The core of Britain's army survived. These weren't just random soldiers. They were trained fighters who would return years later, stronger and ready for payback. One puzzling decision gave the Allies a second chance they shouldn't have had. But this wasn't the only time questionable choices handed enemies an advantage. The next mistake happened in the skies above Britain, and it cost Germany something irreplaceable. Control of the air. The fatal shift. During the Battle of Britain, summer 1940, German aircraft dominated the skies over England. Day after day, they hammered British airfields and aircraft factories. Runways were destroyed. Planes burned on the ground. Pilots were exhausted, flying mission after mission with barely any rest. Britain's Air Force, the RAF, was on the edge of collapse. Historians agree. A few more weeks of this strategy and Britain would have lost air superiority completely. Then everything changed. The focus suddenly shifted from military targets to cities. London, Coventry, and other population centers faced devastating raids. This became known as the Blitz. Thousands of civilians suffered and cities burned. But here's what this shift actually did. It gave the RAF time to breathe. While bombs fell on cities, British crews repaired airfields, built new planes, and rested their pilots. The Air Force recovered. They regained strength. Britain won the battle for the skies, and any plans for invasion across the Channel became impossible. With Britain still standing strong and defiant, attention turned eastward toward an even more dangerous gamble, the largest country on Earth, Operation Barbarossa, invading the Soviet Union. June 1941, Germany launched the biggest land operation in military history. Millions of soldiers, thousands of tanks, and countless aircraft rolled into Soviet territory. It was called Operation Barbarossa, and it opened a second massive battlefront. At first, German forces advanced rapidly, capturing huge amounts of land, but reality set in quickly. The Soviet Union was enormous. Distances stretched on forever. Supply lines became dangerously thin. Then winter arrived, brutal and early. Temperatures dropped far below freezing. German soldiers wore summer uniforms. Equipment froze and stopped working. Tanks wouldn't start. Weapons jammed. Meanwhile, the Soviets had something Germany didn't. Endless reserves. More soldiers, more factories, more resources. What was planned as a quick victory turned into a frozen nightmare. The Eastern Front became a meat grinder, consuming men and materials at an unsustainable rate. Fighting Britain was already difficult. Now adding the Soviet Union stretched Germany to the breaking point. And here's the truly costly part. This invasion didn't even start on schedule. A crisis far to the south caused a critical delay that made everything worse. The costly delay bailing out Italy in the Balkans. Spring 1941, Germany's ally Italy ran into serious trouble. Italian forces struggled in Greece and faced setbacks in North Africa. They needed help, and they needed it fast. Germany couldn't ignore the problem. Troops and equipment were diverted south into the Balkans to fix Italy's mistakes and secure the region. Battles were fought, resources were spent, time ticked away. This Balkan detour delayed the planned Soviet operation by several crucial weeks. Those lost weeks don't sound like much, but in war, timing is everything. Operation Barbarossa finally launched in late June instead of early May. That delay pushed the entire campaign closer to winter. German forces advanced deep into Soviet territory, but they ran out of time. When the brutal Russian winter hit, they were caught unprepared, still fighting far from their goals. Soldiers froze, equipment failed, momentum died in the snow. If the invasion had started on time, would German forces have captured key cities before winter? Historians debate this constantly. What's certain is this: the delay cost dearly. And while struggling in the frozen east, another decision brought a new enemy into the fight. Declaring war on the United States. December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, pulling the United States into the war. But here's the key detail. Japan acted alone. Germany had nothing to do with the attack. America's focus immediately turned toward the Pacific, fighting Japan, not Europe. The European war was an ocean away. Germany could have stayed out of it. But days after Pearl Harbor, on December 11, Germany declared war on the United States. Anyway, this decision honored an alliance with Japan that offered very little benefit in return. What did this declaration actually do? It brought the world's most powerful industrial nation into the European conflict. Factories, which had been producing supplies for Britain, now shifted into full war mode. Tanks, planes, ships, and weapons poured out in unbelievable numbers. Millions of fresh American soldiers prepared to join the fight. Germany was already battling Britain and the Soviet Union. Now add the United States to that list. Three major powers united against one nation. The odds shifted dramatically. And instead of adapting to this new reality, Germany's leader made things even worse by refusing to listen to experienced military advice. Micromanaging and refusing retreats. Germany had brilliant military generals, men with years of experience who understood strategy and battlefield reality. But increasingly their advice was ignored. Orders came down from the top. No retreat. Hold your position no matter what. Stand and fight even when surrounded. This inflexibility turned difficult situations into complete disasters. The most infamous example, Stalingrad. The Sixth Army, over 250,000 soldiers became trapped in the city during the brutal winter of 1942. Generals begged for permission to break out and withdraw. The answer was no. Fight to the last man. The entire army was lost, killed, captured, or frozen. A strategic retreat could have saved hundreds of thousands of experienced soldiers and valuable equipment for future battles. But rigid, no retreat orders destroyed them instead. This pattern repeated across the Eastern Front. Armies became encircled because they couldn't fall back when it made sense. Flexibility wins wars. Stubbornness loses them. And while military decisions drained fighting strength, another approach created enemies where there could have been allies. In the occupied Eastern territories, brutality replaced strategy. Brutal treatment of occupied Eastern populations. Here's something many people don't realize. When German forces first entered parts of the Soviet Union, some locals actually welcomed them. Why? Because Stalin's regime had been harsh. Millions had suffered under Soviet policies. There was genuine anti-Sete feeling in Ukraine, the Baltics, and other regions. Germany had an opportunity here, a chance to turn dissatisfied Soviet citizens into allies, workers, even soldiers. Instead, Nazi ideology got in the way. The belief in racial superiority led to extreme cruelty throughout the occupied East. People were treated harshly. Villages were destroyed. Resources were seized without care for local populations. What happened next was predictable. Instead of cooperation, fierce resistance movements formed. Partisans operated behind German lines, disrupting supply convoys, destroying rail lines, and attacking isolated units. Potential allies became deadly enemies. Potential workers and soldiers joined underground resistance instead. Resources that could have been used became security threats requiring constant military presence. An entire strategic advantage. Millions of people who disliked the Soviet system was completely wasted through brutal policies. And while making enemies in the east, resources desperately needed at the front were being diverted to two other massive projects. Diverting resources to the Holocaust and wonder weapons. While soldiers on the front lines desperately needed supplies, trains, fuel, and manpower, enormous resources were being consumed elsewhere. First, the systematic program to eliminate Jewish people and other targeted groups required massive logistical efforts. Trains that could have carried soldiers and supplies to battlefronts instead transported people to camps. Fuel was burned. Guards and personnel who could have fought were assigned to this horrific operation. At the same time, there was an obsession with experimental wonder weapons, advanced technology projects like the V-2 rocket and jet aircraft. These were impressive achievements, but they consumed huge amounts of resources, engineering talent, and industrial capacity. Meanwhile, frontline soldiers needed basics, reliable tanks, ammunition, winter clothing. Instead of mass-producing proven effective equipment, focus went toward complex experimental projects that arrived too late and in too few numbers to matter. Two massive resource drains, one unspeakably evil, one technologically ambitious, weakened the overall war effort when every train, every gallon of fuel, every soldier mattered. 8 mistakes, each one opened a crack. Together, they guaranteed collapse from within. These weren't random errors. They were fatal choices that doomed Nazi Germany from within. Operation Barbarossa alone stretched forces beyond breaking. Combined with refusing retreats, ignoring generals, and battling 3 superpowers simultaneously, collapse became inevitable. History's lesson remains clear. Even dominant forces self-destruct through catastrophic decisions. Which blunder sealed the outcome first? Historians still debate. One thing certain, these choices transformed certain victory into total defeat. The war was lost through mistakes, not just enemies. Don't forget to subscribe.